Aptine Incident Report, June 4th, 2015. KYB, Evidence and Forensics. Sample 24 of 156. Handwritten letter. Dear world, my name is Kara Yvette Bernard, and I went on a long trip. Well, it didn't take very long, but I went a pretty good distance. At least that's what they tell me. But now I'm back and I feel great. I even got pregnant right before I left. Imagine that. I don't even remember having a boyfriend. Oh, I bet he was nice. Oh, speaking of nice, the doctors were so kind to me. When they sent me back home, I got a whole bunch of medicine that helps me feel good. In fact, it's the reason I'm writing this letter in the first place. I just want the world to know how good I feel. I wish so badly they all knew this feeling. The doctors told me I'd be having my baby in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Oh, it's just incredible. I always thought it was 9 months, but they said mine was special. I've never felt so happy in my life. I feel like a different person, like I barely recognize the person I was before I went on my trip and met everyone and got to be better. Now that I'm back home, I'm remembering a little bit from how things were before it all happened. Like, when I went in the bathroom to pee, I saw the bathtub I got to play in for 8 days while they got me ready to travel. That was the first time I got to hear Dr. Yao's voice. Oh, Dr. Yao, he is the sweetest man, especially in person. He's just adorable. Almost as tiny as me, but so super smart. I wanted to tell him that I had a crush on him from the moment we met, but I got too shy. Maybe if he happens to read this letter someday, he'll learn that way, and it'll be like a happy accident. I wish I could remember more of my trip. I remember traveling was cold and dark, but it didn't last too long. It was fun to float. It was like I was in the ocean or something, but I didn't need to breathe, just like when I was in the bathtub. The voices I met when I got there were a little scary at first. I still don't understand what they told me. Something about tunnels or tunneling. A lot about something that sounded like T-Leo-G. Science is so weird. Not you, Dr. Yao, though. You're the best. Dr. Yao was the one who said I'd be having a baby boy. I think I was scared or crying because he told me that before I went on my trip. But then he gave me medicine and I felt so much better. I started thinking about names and I asked Dr. Yao what his first name was and he said Ethan. That settled it. My baby's name is Ethan. Even while I'm using the medication that makes me feel amazing, I was worried about the little one. I felt him kicking a lot, and I worried he was sad or uncomfortable. It just felt wrong knowing I was so happy and he might be sad. It's just kind of unfair, right? I thought about Ethan being sad, and that made me think about Dr. Ethan Yao being sad, and that was just too much. Even if I felt all the goodness in the world, it was still far too little pleasure if I was the only one lucky enough to feel it. So I decided to take little Ethan out and share my joy. The medicine they gave me is great because I thought it would hurt a lot, but it only kind of felt bad for a little while. It was okay, though. I got to see Ethan early, and I was right. He was so sad. He cried and cried. I remembered some of the things from back in my old life that used to make boys happy, so I did that for a while, and he stopped crying. He wouldn't even move. I knew I was on the right track, so I took some more of my own medicine and crushed some up to give it to little Ethan. We sat together for a little while, and I felt a nice warm breeze coming in from outside. I realized Ethan's so small he could hardly feel it. I opened him up a little so he could feel the warm air. After I took that last dose of medication, it made me feel even better, so I took more. Ethan and I spent the afternoon taking our medicine and enjoying the day. Then I had the idea that 2 happy Ethans would be twice as good as only having one. So I made Ethan into 2, then into 4, then 8. I kept going for a while, and now I have more happy, quiet Ethans than I ever could have dreamed about. They start to get a little cold, so I carefully put them back in their little belly house, and then I started writing this letter for the world to see. Well, the world and Dr. Yao. I hope you all have a really great day, and Ethans and I say hello and be happy. There's so much to be happy about. Love, Kara and the Ethans. When I posted online about my sleeping disorder, I received a message almost immediately from a man named Dr. Yao. He has a practice in the city, and he offered to see me for free. So I took him up on it, and when we met, he seemed more curious than concerned when I told him that I hadn't slept in a month after having an allergic reaction to something my partner had cooked. Even when I brought up my hallucinations and how I was seeing things that were impossible, I didn't detect a hint of worry in his face. Quite on the contrary, all I read was barely contained excitement. I got the feeling I was the patient he'd been waiting for. Someone to bring fun to an otherwise boring day of treating neurosis and eating disorders and depressions. Since you'll be reading this at our next session, Dr. Yao, maybe you can let me know if that's true. I promise I won't be mad. Anyway, I'm supposed to write about my hallucinations and any other abnormal sensory experiences I have, so Dr. Yao can use the info to help me. It's also supposed to give me a new perspective on my experiences. I'm not sure how. I told him the only reason I sought help in the first place is because Stuart has been cold and distant ever since it all started. So I guess here's where I'm supposed to write all about the hallucinations. I'm sorry in advance if I sound like a crazy person. I've always been the sane one in our family, so this is new to me. It doesn't matter where I am. I can be at home or at work or in the car. When a hallucination begins, my vision starts to blur, like I'm drunk or dizzy, but I don't feel sick. And my legs start getting tired. It reminds me of when I ran track in high school and college, and it was near the end of a race. It's that awkward, wobbly exhaustion from intense movement. The next part gets a little weird, and I'm not sure if I'm going to explain it properly. It's funny. I took a philosophy elective in college and was bored out of my mind. I aced the class, but I didn't see any real-life application to the stuff I learned. Now, though, when I'm using it to figure out how to talk about my hallucinations, I think some of it relates. Hear me out. When one starts, I split. Not physically, obviously, but my personality goes in 2 directions. There's this one part that's acting like the normal me. Regular Todd Nilsson, who operates without any outward hint that he's having a hallucination. And then there's the hallucinating Todd Nilsson, who's always running. The running me moves like he's possessed. This is where that philosophy thing comes in. It's like I have a teleological impulse to run. That me, the running me, has no reason to live other than to take as many steps as he possibly can until his legs are worn down to nothing. It's his design. It's his purpose. The hallucinations have grown progressively longer since they began. When I'm in the midst of one, no one would have any clue. The non-hallucinating me talks and operates like a typical, boring investment banker. The thing is, though, I'm not me while this is happening. Neither of the split Todds are me. Real me, old me, the me from before the allergic reaction, is viewing it all from from somewhere else, somewhere deeper. I don't get to watch all the time, and I don't have much input, but when I do, I'm allowed to control the parts of my body until the task is finished. Right now, I think I'm in control despite a hallucination taking hold almost exactly when I typed, "I've always been the sane one in our family." One corner of my mind started running at full speed through jungles and deserts and cities. That part of me looks down and sees stick-thin legs covered in blood. I watch my hands reach and tear flesh from my body and throw it onto the ground. Another corner of my mind watches as I type these words and blood glistens on my fingers. I'm being allowed to feel the stickiness on the keys each time I press them. I'm pressing each one as purposefully as the steps I'm taking in my hallucination. And this is the first time I've ever been allowed control over my communications during one of the splits. I've always been an observer, and as the non-runner spoke and acted like me. Now, though, all three are here at once. The runner is running. Old me is typing. The other, though, the non-runner, is watching. I know the blood on my fingers is his doing. I'm typing as the non-runner is taking command of my eyes and head and neck. I've been made to look in the direction of a body. It's Stuart. He looks like he's been dead for over a month. The non-runner isn't allowing me to express surprise or horror. Swollen, oozing holes about the diameter of my finger cover his body. Growing out of each one is a cluster of stringy, white mushrooms. They're the same ones I had a reaction to when Stuart cooked them. They're the same ones that started my hallucinations. I can see, right by his crushed skull, the cast iron pan he'd used to prepare them. The non-runner is having me reread the first part of this letter. The name I'm seeing, Dr. Yao, has no meaning to me. The letter says I've met him, and it was he who instructed me to write this, but I have no recollection of such a meaning. The non-runner shakes my head in disagreement and directs my attention to the mushrooms in the body. The other me, the runner, has stopped moving. He stares outward at a vast, glistening field of meat and embers. As I watch, my legs start to tremble and shake. My left hand is starting to claw at the skin of my chest. The non-runner, my outward-appearing self, is instructing me to move. Now, as I finish this letter, I'm overwhelmed by a sense of intense purpose. I don't need this third part anymore. I don't need old me. There are only two parts, the runner and the non-runner. Dr. Yao, whoever you are, I hope this is useful to you. Whatever parts of old me that are left, they're in this letter. We have to go now. He has to go now. I have to go now. I have to run.